One of the things missing in our authentication system is a login route. So in this video, we're going to create one. To do this, we're going to create a new endpoint where the client can post the user's email and password, and we'll respond to that with a valid authorization token. Let's begin by creating a route. So we're going to call the router again in our user route file, and we're going to create a subpath for this one. So it's going to be route /login. So that would mean the full URI of this endpoint is going to be /users/login. So this is going to be a post route. So we'll call post, and we're going to pass in the controller, and the name of this controller method will make login like that. Coming over to our controller file now, let's add a property login to the exports object, and we're going to assign an async function with the standard rec and res arguments, and we're going to require 2 bits of data in the post body, which is going to be the email and the password. So let's declare a const object with 2 properties, email and password, and we're going to get those by destructuring rec body. So what we want to do now is query our user collection by the email and password and see if we find a matching user. However, we first need to hash the password. Now, rather than doing that here in the controller, let's create a new custom model method for it. Over in our user model file, we'll begin with a call to the user schema statics property, and we're going to create a new function property, find by credentials. So we're going to assign an async function to this one, and it's going to take the email and password as arguments. Oops, spell password right. Okay, so let's begin this method by querying the database with the supplied email so that we can be working with the appropriate user. So we can do this by declaring a variable user and awaiting the find one method of the model. So it's actually going to be this dot find one, and the criteria for finding this model is going to be the email, which we can pass as a property value shorthand like that. If no user can be found, we're going to throw an error from this method. So let's go if not user, and inside the block we'll go throw, and we're going to pass a nested object to describe this error. So the first property is going to be errors like that, and we'll assign an object to that. And the next property for this object is going to be email, and we'll assign another object to that. And finally, the property of the final object here is going to be message, and we'll assign a string to this, user not found, like that. So why are we making such a complex error object? Well, as we'll see in the next module of the course, these error messages are going to be really useful for client-side validation. So now we've dealt with a case where we don't find a user. So let's now create an else block after this. And in here, we're going to verify the password. So to do this, we're going to need to use our bcrypt object again. So this time we'll use the compare method. So we'll go bcrypt compare. And this is going to take 2 arguments. So firstly, the plain text password that we're passing in, and the other will be the hash password that is stored on the user model. Oops, password. All right, so the compare method is going to return a promise, and that promise is either going to resolve to true or false. So what we'll do is we'll actually slap an await in front of this, and then we're going to put it inside an if statement there like that. So now what we can do is deal with the case where the passwords do match, and also deal with the case where the passwords don't match. So it looks like I've got some problem with my formatting there. All right. Okay. So in the case that the passwords do match, let's simply just return the user. And if they don't, we're going to throw another error. And so rather than creating one from scratch, let's just go ahead and copy this one. So I'll paste that in there like that. And still got formatting problems. And we'll actually change the message of this error though to incorrect password. Coming back over to our controller now, let's go ahead and implement this new method. So after we've gotten the email and password from the request body, let's create a try catch block. And in the try, we're going to declare a variable user, and we'll await our custom model method, which is user find by credentials. Obviously, we need to pass in our email and password to that as well. So after that, we can simply just return the user. So we'll go res.send and pass the user in there like that. Oop, made a typo there. Okay, now remember our method is going to throw an error if the user can't be found or if the passwords don't match. So down here in the catch, we can simply return a status of 400 and we'll pass that error in there like that. Now the last and most important thing we need to do is return the auth token with the response if the credentials are valid. So fortunately this is pretty easy now that we've added the generate auth token instance method. So all we have to do is, before we call res.send, is create a constant token, and we just await the output of user generate auth token. Oops, generate auth token. Okay, now what we can do is chain a header method in our response here. So we'll go header, and obviously the key will be authorization, and the value will be a template literal with bearer, and we'll put the token in there like that. And that should now be done. Coming over to Postman now, let's create a new request. And this one will be called post users login. And we set the type to post. And the URL, start with the URL variable and then users login. Now in the body of this request, we obviously want to set this to raw, and the content type will be JSON. Now what we're going to do is create a JSON object to send away, and the first property will be email. And if you're not sure of a valid user, just go over to the post users and create a new one now. So now you can be sure that you've got at least this user, so we can come over here and I'll put in that email, so it'll be test 10@test.com, and the password will be TEST1234. Alright, with that done, we should be able to send off this request now, and we get the user back in the response body like that. And of course, if you check the headers, you should see the authorization token, which we do, which is awesome. Now before we move on, let's actually use this auth header of this new request to populate the token environment variable here in Postman. So that way, if we need to get a new token for running any of our other requests, we can simply log in rather than having to create a new user all the time. So to do this, we're going to go over to the post users request and go into the test section. Where is it? Here. And I'm just going to copy all this same code. I think I can go copy there and then come into this new request and paste all that into that section, and that should do that. Before we finish this video, let's make one small change. So to explain what it is, consider this scenario. A user logs in from one browser, and then obviously a token is going to be generated and stored on the model. But then they log in from another browser. That means that the generate auth token method is going to be called again, and it would actually overwrite the original token, therefore invalidating the first login session. So even though this is an edge case, the expected behavior here would actually be that the user can be logged in on both browsers. So to accommodate this, we're going to go up to our generate auth token method here, and what we're going to do is we're going to check if there's already an existing token by going if this.token, and if there is, we can just go and return this.token rather than creating a new one.